I do see more people getting the sodas at Wawa sheets and.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. I know it's about an hour.
All right, we ready to go? Ready?
Fire away, Frank.
Roll call.
Frank Fasciano,
Here.
Paul Anthony, Robert Brooks, John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hemberger, Mike Sturshik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Is there any public comment?
No, sir.
All right, then. So we're going to move right into the pension review. You want to introduce the presenters?
I'll give you a second. Good morning, everyone. John Catesti, who handles our investments for defined benefits and also our advisor on our defined contributions. I just want to kind of walk through the target dates and what we're going to do with that. We had some discussion sometime last year about using that as a default fund. So we've done some work on that, and this is kind of bringing it to the board before we kind of move forward. And we just kind of wanted to keep the board up to date. All right, John?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is just a continuation of a process that probably started 2 years ago, where we were just coming in and putting a more institutional approach onto the defined contribution plans. And over that time period, we did a search for a platform provider. We brought it, with LNA's, through the LNAA committee to Mission Square. We redesigned the fund lineup, and there just was one missing component, is the QDIA and maybe adding some target date funds, which came, out of a discussion, from committees like this. So,
I hit the PowerPoint.
power,
There you go.
next. There it is. Okay, just as a quick snapshot, these are the three defined contribution plans. These are current valuations as of March 31st. You can see, the participants in it and the market values. So there's two 401A plans, union, non-union, and the deferred comp. These were the years that they became effective, and like I said, nothing really changed in the plan since then. And about 3 years ago, LNAA decided to take a hard look at it and redesign. So, where did I point it? Try power.
The PowerPoint.
Power.
The power.
I went too far. Okay, what is a target date fund? What a target date fund is, actually has a year in the fund name. So if somebody comes in and they're a new employee, they're 25 years old, and the assumed retirement age is 65, that means they're going to work for 40 years to keep the math easy. And say it's 2025, they would actually buy the 2065 target date, because that correlates to when they would retire. What's that?
Seems like a life sentence.
Yeah. If you come in, you're a new employee, and you're 55, and your retirement age is 65, you would buy the fund that's 10 years out. So if it was 2025, you would buy the 2035. It's a simple decision. All they have to determine when they retire. And this only applies to people that don't make an investment decision. People still have their own discretion if they want to, but if somebody just says, hey, I want a turnkey solution, I don't want to touch it, all they have to do is identify the year they're going to retire. And the HR group here, benefits group here, will actually put them in it if they don't do anything. And in a target date fund, even though there's different years of retirement, it's still a diversified portfolio. It's one investment, but underneath there's a variety of different asset classes. And that's what it's saying: large cap stocks, mid cap, foreign real estate, cash. And the pros of it is it's very simple. Not everybody right now, the current default investment option is a 40-60 portfolio. So whether you're 20 years old or 60 years old, if you come in and don't make a selection, you're getting that 40-60 portfolio. This is more tailored to your age. And the classical thinking is the younger you are, you want to have more equity in your portfolio. The older you are, you want to have less. And that's what the pros are. The cons is that age is the major determinant in what portfolio you go into. But the pros usually, or most of the time, outweigh the cons. And this is target date funds have only been around for 10 to 20 years. And I would say a lot of plans are adding them to their fund lineup to help people with various retirement ages from the day they begin working.
John, but that 25-year-old could choose to go into a 2040 plan
He
as
could.
opposed to a 2000.
He could. Or if they don't want
If
to.
they choose.
Yeah.
You're talking default now is where they
Yeah,
go.
yeah. This is only if somebody walks in and says, I don't want to do them, I don't want to.
Gotcha.
And before the benefits group, they would have to sit there and try to help people build out portfolios they didn't feel comfortable with it. Or even before the 40/60 was in there, it was basically a stable value fund,
Okay.
which was all cash. And we knew that was a problem. We were trying to, get people. So one thing you're going to hear about today is the glide path. And all that means is how much equity do you have as you approach retirement? And the glide path is this. As you approach retirement, the amount of equity in the portfolio declines. And that's one of the biggest determinant in the return of a portfolio. So with an LNAA subcommittee, we started a search for these funds. We started with a universe of 25,000 different mutual funds. We searched, we did a screen. What are the target date funds out there? There was 2,071 of them. 12B1 fee, that is a retail fee that you guys don't have to pay because you're an institution. You take that out, there's 990 funds. Then we wanted to look at, hey, what have been some of the best performing target date funds over the time period? It got us down to 41. And then over the 21, there were 5 left. Once we started talking to people, there were 5 left that we thought were valuable or should be considered. And those 5 were Fidelity, T. Rowe, Vanguard, American, and MFS. The 3 that we settled on that we brought to the committee was Fidelity, T. Rowe, and Vanguard. You can read why we took out. MFS was too active. American funds, they had some exposure to asset classes that we didn't like. So the 3 ended up being Fidelity, T. Rowe, Vanguard, all standard names in the industry, very reputable, large, and cheap. Here's some of the different characteristics of the funds. And, they're quite big, 91 billion for the Fidelity, 135 for T. Rowe, Vanguard, 493. The 2 from here, we went down to Vanguard and Fidelity. We were impartial to both. The committee felt like the Fidelity, because it was a complement to the fund lineup that you currently have. The participants are going to see Vanguard and Fidelity. And also the big component is they're indexed, meaning it's cheap. It goes along with the philosophy of the authority of having passive index funds at a cheap price, and it's going to capture the market whenever you invest in those things. Unlike somebody like T. Rowe where they're active, they're out there trying to trade these things. This is the glide path. It's a simple chart. It looks kind of busy. Down here is years to retirement. This is your target when you do retire. So what this is saying is 50 years from retirement, 15 years. And on the left axis is the percentage of equity. So you can see the blue line is Fidelity. So roughly, if you're 50 years from retirement, you're going to be 95% equity. If you're 5 years from retirement, you're roughly 60% equity. And then you retire at 65, you don't stop investing. This is just where the portfolio is at 65. And then this is what happens, for the next 20 years after retirement. And, somebody like Fidelity, it goes down to 20% equity over that time period. And so you can see the glide path, the amount of equity declines. There's variations, but, Fidelity and Vanguard are very similar. So 20 years after retirement, what it's saying is you're roughly 20% equity, 80% fixed income, and then it really doesn't change. It just stays static there. So 25, you would be 90 years old, 25 years after retirement date. This is, you can look at this. This is just some of the bullet points for Fidelity. This was a committee decision. How many funds to put in here into the plan, and they chose 5-year increments. So starting, the first fund would be 2025, anybody retiring in 2025, 2030. Here's the cost. This is, so 1% would be 1.0, so it's 8 basis points, very, very cheap. And like I said, they're indexed. If you want to look at the performance, this is the performance of each of the fund over the time period. What we kind of look at are always longer term numbers. So this is the return, but this rank, the number in the parentheses is where it ranks in the universe. And the goal is to always be in the top 50. And if you can see, whether it's on the 5-year or 10-year, the funds as a rank relative to their peers are in almost the top third of their peer in terms of.
Can you leave that slide up for 1 second? I'm going to take a quick, quick sidebar, if you could go back to where you were. One of the discussions we have on an annual basis is what we use as our assumed rate of return in regard to our pension funds, what we expect the funds to earn over the long term, and that drives then what contributions we need to make sure that we're setting aside adequate funding for the plans. If you look at the 5 and the 10-year categories, you look at the rates of return, keep those in mind when we get to the discussion in regard to our assumed rate of return. Because I've been arguing for how long now? 7 years, Tom, to lower that? Yeah. Because I want to make sure that these funds have the appropriate funding in place, because we've got to fund it no matter what. Yeah. So we always want to make sure that we're setting aside a little now rather than a lot later. And we also, it's a commitment that we made to all the employees at the airport authority, and it's one that we take very seriously.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So every number that is left of this column is in this number. So 1 year at -7 point, well, it's a bad example, but -7.1 here is in that 8%. Yeah. And what that 8% represents is for the last 10 years, if you would be invested in this whatever fund, you would make 8% per year. It's not a total of 8, but it's 8% per
some
year.
Years 15, some years negative 10.
Yeah, and it's around 6.9. Yeah, and that's the 1 year number there. So this is the last, or the next steps, the action items that we need to do to close this out. The expectation is to roll it out July 1st. Why July 1st? There's 30 days for Mission Square, who is the platform provider, to get their systems up to date. Then there's a 30-day disclosure that has to go out to the participants saying, hey, this is the new default investment option. They will get it electronically and physically, the notice in the mail. And I think, we defined there was a little, it was a little cloudy what the full retirement age, but I think we matched it up with the pension plans to 65. So no matter if you're in the defined contribution or the defined benefit plan, everybody's assumed retirement age is 65. And that's just, you need to know what the assumed retirement age so you can calculate if somebody's 20, what fund to put them in. And then this one is we got to start just putting it into the continuing education program, which you do have participant education specific to you through Mission Square. They already know that will be part of the program when they do meet with the employees, how to use the target date funds. And when new employees do sign up with the authority, there will be part of their onboarding process. And then the last is just to update the investment policy statement, which is the governing document of the plan saying, hey, these target date funds are going in there. Everybody in this room, what are our expectations for how these funds should perform and what's success or failure? And that investment policy statement is something you've never had. That was something Todd and his team implemented about 2 years ago to put a little governance on the plan.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
It's important to point out, I know you keep saying about what age, but that's an automatic. So this is, if the person doesn't choose whatever their age is, it goes in there. It's not like we go, well, you're this age. It's just, we just send the age into Mission Square and then it's kind of done automatically. It's not like we have to calculate that ourselves. So, and again, this is for new employees. Existing employees can jump in there, but for new employees that don't make a choice. Keep in mind, we also have, we have regular investment advice that we offer to the employees through Mission Square. So they can get individualized information on their stuff, which is going to be better because it's going to be specific to them. But if they don't choose to do that, and they don't choose anything else, then they're going to go into this plan. So there's a lot of layers before we get to there, but obviously we talked about this being the last layer of defense.
If they don't choose, they pick the target date, they get savvy over the years, they can adjust their, right?
Any
Right,
point
so
in
they
time.
can always change it, but again, that's just default.
Yeah. Day one, if they want to put 100% in the S&P 500 and not use a target, they can.
I'll tell you, Frank, the biggest fallacy we have here is that employees will actively manage their accounts.
Correct.
They won't.
Not just here,
It's
probably,
in
right?
every 401k plan I've ever been involved in, whatever decisions they make up front, it stays there for 8 years and they're out of whack very, very quickly.
And at one point, it was high, almost as 80% of whatever people signed up for is they stayed in. And at the point, it was a stable value / money market fund, and they never moved away. And we saw that as a problem, and that's why we're trying, I'm sorry,
20% did.
to do that.
Well,
It's coming down, yeah.
well, if that's when we did the original transformation, and we went from, and this is kind of the next step. We did the first transformation, which was most of the folks were in the stable value fund. And there was a pretty good return that kind of enticed people what we had with Mass Mutual. Then we switched out of them to Mission Square, and we really wanted people to go into something that would give them more of a return long term. And that's why we went into the 40-60 plan. And now we're kind of individualizing it to the target date funds. Again, if they don't choose. The best option is always to talk with them. I mean, it goes out all the time, but as John said, a lot of people don't take advantage of that. And then you would have to do a follow-up, obviously, as well. So it's not like doing it now and then you do it forever. This will kind of do it automatically for you. So again, we're really trying to look out for people long-term, and this is just kind of the next line.
Can they go in the target date fund by themselves? Like
They can go into a target
They can choose
date.
the target date fund as
They
well,
can
right?
choose one on their
And
own.
then they can choose the retirement age.
Well, they would have to choose the target date fund that they want,
Right, but
based on their own age, right?
right, but they're choosing the retirement age then too. For instance, we have target date funds
Right.
at the IBW. I plan on retiring much earlier than I actually put in there because I want to be more aggressive now.
Right.
Right, so they can choose a farther thing, and then when you get it, then you can bring it back, right?
So if the
Just
formula,
to Mike's point, you can be in multiple funds. So for example, my daughter's retirement funds are in target date funds. I have her in 3 different ones over a 10-year period for exactly that reason. I want to load it with a little bit more risk
Right.
in the middle, but I want to also have it on autopilot. So
Right.
you can do exactly that, so you
Okay.
can make your choices.
yeah, that's a great way.
Yeah.
If people don't say anything, the system says, you're retiring at 65, but you could go in and say, hey, I'm not retiring, I want to retire at 55, and you pick the fund that correlates to that,
Right.
that age. And that's the important part.
Right.
And that's the important part, because usually, like, some of these discussions were happening in the benefits with, Zoe and Anita, and is that, hey, what should I do here? And they didn't feel comfortable being in that position, so now it's systematic. You're like, hey, if you don't want to do anything, you're 65, you're in the 2050 target date fund.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry, Judge, I just wanted to chime in.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that's all we had. So it should, if everything goes right, and the expectation is July 1st, to roll it out, sorry.
Does anybody have any questions? Because again, this is something we talked about before. We just wanted to make sure that everybody understood we were doing our due diligence and we're ready to move forward on it. But it's not something we actually have to vote on. It's just, we wanted to bring it to the board because it was brought up by the board that we were moving
Yeah,
forward.
this is something we talked about.
Yeah, this was, I think it was Paul brought it up
We
about a year
brought it
ago.
up and we said we would check into it, but
Yeah.
we've been doing that behind the scenes and this is just kind of us saying we're going to move forward.
We just rolled this out within the last 2 to 3 years. It's been great for us, having the target date. It's been phenomenal.
Like I said, it's a great thing. We're just making it more robust because again, it's just a last line of defense if you don't choose the other options that are in front of you.
It was the same thing. We rolled it out at the bank. It's a similar timeframe. I think it was 3 years ago. And we've got 70% of our assets in target funds. I mean, people just jumped on it.
Yeah, it's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's easy for them
Yeah.
to say, hey, yeah, I'm going to retire that year. Yeah.
And my bellwether is when we're talking about people this age, my daughter's 30, and I would want to offer the people that we have here the same things I put my daughter in.
Right.
So, and I've got her in target funds.
Yeah, that's great. So that's it for the DC side. The next, we just have a little market update and talk about the union and non-union DB plans, defined benefit plans. So that's it.
Market's going up, right?
Don't
Am
jinx
I
us,
in on
John.
camera?
Don't jinx us, John.
Yes, you are.
Yes, yeah, so this, yeah, this was through March 31st. The numbers actually, once we get to them, are actually a little bit better since then. But this is a quick summary from last year, and not to tear off the Band-Aid again, because things have improved since then. But on the left here, this is the worst years of the S&P, basically, in modern time. If you look at, in 1931, the Great Depression, the market was down 43.8. Here we were, in 22, we were negative 18.1. They're already calling it the Great Inflation. So, just on the market, it was one of the top, seventh worst years. Over here, this chart's probably more important to you because it talks about being a diversified investor. If you see it up top there, 60-40 portfolio, that means 60% equities, 40% fixed income. That is the most common allocation, whether you're a small retirement plan or a large retirement plan. And look where 2022 falls. It is the worst returning to be a diversified investor, basically since the 30s. What this is showing down here, why did that happen? For the first time, usually if equities go down, bonds go up. Last year, everything went down. And
When bonds go up, rates go down.
when bonds go up, rates go down.
Yeah, that's an important point, because we all know rates went up last year.
Yes. And that's what this chart is kind of showing. Let's start down here. 2002, that was the deflation, the technology bubble. The S&P for that just calendar year, it was a little worse than that once you look at some endpoints, but it was down 22%, just the market. But if you add 40% exposure to bonds, it was only down negative 7.1. So from here to here was due to the bond exposure. 2008, great financial crisis, the mortgage-backed securities, the commercial mortgages, the market was down negative 36.6%. You add 40% to bonds because money flew to the safe haven, the total return for a diversified investor was negative 13.9. Last year, even though equities weren't down as big as some of these other periods, once you added bonds, it only offset the return basically by 1.2%. So, and we'll talk a little bit. But so as a diversified investor, this was one of the toughest periods on record. You can see over time. Okay, why did it happen? This is exactly what occurred. This doesn't look this significant, but if you're a fixed income investor, this is very, very significant. So this is what's called the yield curve. If you go across the bottom, this stands for maturity. So let's look at 5Y, 5 years. So that's a 5-year treasury. If you had bought December 21, so what is that, 15 months ago or 16 months? If you would have bought a 5-year treasury, it would have paid you 1.3% per year for 5 years. You fast forward the clock, just 12 months, that's the green line. That's December 31st, 2022, which is, 4 months ago. That same 5-year treasury that was paying 1.3 is paying 4%. So rates went up by that magnitude. That was by design. That's what, you hear about the Federal Reserve raising rates. This is what they were trying to do. And if you look, this is considered a normal yield curve. This is an inverted yield curve. And all that means is when you go to buy a CD at a bank, you expect the longer you give your money to the bank, the higher interest. Like a 5-year CD should pay more than a 2-year CD. And right now it's inverted, where a 5-year security is paying more. Well, if you look at the blue line, let's look at 4.1. What is that? A 2-year security is paying more than a 30-year security. So the yield curve's inverted. The Fed controls this side of the curve. Over here, this is more the economy. It basically means we're in a recession when something like this happens and the Fed is trying to pull liquidity out of the market. The great news is, now if you deploy money into fixed income, you can actually get a return, right? Like if you put your money, lend it to the federal or the US government for 5 years, you can make 4%, which, that's something we haven't had the luxury to have, for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So this is what caused the equity market to go down because they're pulling liquidity by having higher rates. And all that means is you take a house, a $300,000 house. When interest rates are down here, the mortgage might be $1,000 a month. That same $250,000 house, when interest rates are at 7%, it might cost you $1,800 a month to buy that same house. You're buying the same house, it's just costing you more in financing, and that's how they pull liquidity out of the market. This here is good news too. Why has the Federal Reserve been increasing rates? They want to lower inflation. This is always a great debate. The headline CPI, that is what we feel, okay? That has energy and food in it. The core CPI is what the Fed looks at. So the gray line is the core CPI whenever you hear them mention it. So at some point over the last 12 months, we were up almost 10% in headline CPI. You felt it in food prices. I was laughing. The place, I used to 50-cent chicken wings. Now they're $1 chicken wings at my local place. And that's where people are feeling it. You felt it in the gas tank filling up your car. But look at this. Since the Fed has increasing rates, inflation is coming down, which is good. The long-term average is this dotted line, which is roughly, where is it up there? The 50-year average, that column there. The core CPI is 3.9. Right now, we're slightly below 6%. So we're not that far away. So what the Fed has been doing has been working. The question is, have they gone too far? Are they pulling too much liquidity out of the market? And only time will tell. This is called Consumer Sentiment Index. I think we talked about this a little time, but it is such a great chart. All it is a survey of 500 people by the University of Michigan twice a month. It goes back to the 30s. This blue line is the average of the sentiment. In September, the fourth quarter of this past year, and we found this fascinating in the office, it was the lowest ever. People felt the worst they ever have about the U.S. economy and the stock market, which are two different things. And the survey just says, hey, how do you feel about it over the last 12 months? How do you feel about it today? And how do you feel about it over the next 12 months? But as an investor, it's actually a good sign because that usually means everybody that wants to sell has already sold, but there's not that much negativity left because people are already negative. And that might be due to the result of what they saw last year with bonds selling off and if they were hiding out in fixed income. So it made a low here. This is what I'm saying is the good news. If you look at these other troughs in history, this plus number underneath is what happens over the next 12 months. Once people get so pessimistic they don't know what to do, usually, okay, knock on wood, usually the market goes up from there. And that's what so since 2011, the market went up 15.4 since this trough. From this trough in 08, it went up 22. Since this trough, back in September, October of last year, we are already up 16%. And this was COVID. People actually viewed last year at a magnitude worse than where we were during COVID, but still at this little trough, it ended up going up 43%, but that's because of some of the liquidity programs they put out there. So what I'm saying is it feels like we're closer to the end of this than we are to the beginning. This is just valuations. When the market is on this line, it means you're at fair value. And that's kind of what we're saying, or the chart is saying. It's like the market's not overvalued, it's not undervalued, it's kind of at fair value. But the market usually doesn't remain at fair value for long periods of time. You can go back over history. This here, this is something you guys already know. I don't know if you were having a hard time attracting people, but this gray line is the unemployment rate. Anything below the dotted blue line is basically full employment. As of February, the unemployment rate in the U.S. was 3.6%. So there's still a lot of people out there, a lot of employers looking for jobs or looking for people for jobs because we are at full employment. This blue line is what you have to pay to attract people, and it kind of spiked last year. And with the economy slowing, the rising rates, wage growth is actually declining. But that spike, April 2000, 14.4, that was during COVID. So 14% of everybody that wanted to work were out of a job, and we're already back. I mean, this is a long chart from 72. We've never been, lower. So, and I always throw this in because the airport, I'm sure you have better tracking than we do, but I love this chart. As you know, people primarily only fly for two reasons, leisure or work. And what it's saying is, and this is hard data, where they're looking at air traffic travel, hard numbers. And basically, 2022, we are at an all-time high or close to it. The yellow was, during COVID, and then you can see 2019 and 2021. And, you guys know more about this than I do. But, and that's considerable because as the ticket prices have gone up, because of jet fuel and some of the operations, people are still flying at a significant manner, which is good news for the economy as a whole. And then this is a chart we always have. But so that's kind of our view on the market is, we think a lot of this is behind us, but I mean, we have the debt ceiling debate heating up. Who knows which way that goes. We're going into another election cycle, but you take that noise away, the consumer is still strong, and corporate earnings are hanging in there. And as you saw from the last chart, people are still active out there. Even American Express came out this morning. They missed a little bit, but their numbers were still quite strong. So, any questions, thoughts about the markets or? So that's our thinking. Okay, we're going to get into the plans. As you know, you have two plans. You have the union. This is the value as of March 31st. This is non-union. You can see the second line down. You're a net distributor out of the plans. The investment gains. Each plan has made $3.3 million in the union. This is only since we took over, basically beginning in 17. And 3.6 in the non-union plan. Down here, just the contributions. This is the total contributions that you did for each plan in 2022, and already year to date, you've already contributed $157,000 between employee and the authority contributions.
If I remember correctly, our funding status last year was about 100%.
Yes.
So the market basically hit us for 10 points in
Oh,
terms
yeah.
of.
No,
That's-
Mark, we were actually we were 110 on the non-union and 116 on the union plan.
So market performance last year cost us 20 points.
Mhm.
Okay.
And yes, that's good. But the way I look at that is like going out to your dock on the ocean and measuring the water at low tide. Everything moves in a cycle. We happen to be in a trough.
Yep.
And this goes back 5 or 6 years. Also, you guys already took the actuarial rate return from 8 down to.
We took from 8 down to 7.5, and then going forward for next year, when we do the valuation for this year, it'll be 7.25.
So without even the market moving or additional liability, every time you inch that down, that affects the funding staff. But it makes it more prudent, a conservative plan.
And go back, when you're looking at the assumed rate of return at 7.5, remember back to the chart that we were talking about in terms of the 5 and 10-year performance with the balance funds. That's why we want to make sure that that assumed rate of return is a realistic return so that we know that we're funding this appropriately.
Right. Okay. This is in there, just, you know, if you kind of want to see where the, you know, per quarter, you can see usually in the fourth quarter is when you make a lump sum, a large contribution.
Actually, now we're making them quarterly, so.
Yeah, that's showing up here, yeah. This is the allocation of the plan. Both plans, these are actual numbers. This is the target per the investment policy statement. If you look, they're run identical. Sometimes, you know, you can have the second or the number to the right of the decimal can be off just because of cash flows. More money's coming into the plan. Some plans, well, some's going out. But overall, they try to be managed identically. Overall, you're 60% equity. If you look at within the equity component, 40% large, 5 small value equity, 5 small growth equity, 10% international, and 40% fixed income. And, you know, just because the unions, I mean, the plans are same. This is the performance. The top line is net of fee performance of the plan. So year to date, 5.5, 1 year. So that's 12 months going back from March 31st. Negative 5.4. We don't have a 10-year number yet, but you know, since what is that? Basically a 7-year number. The plan's about 16.7% per year. But like I said, we're kind of at a low tide right now. And then you can see what each of the asset classes are doing. And then this number represents how much money you have in each asset class. So you see the Vanguard S&P 500, people have asked how much index exposure do we have? Your large cap exposure is index. You have 2.9 million in the index versus 7.3 million or 7.4 million for the whole plan. You can see the other asset classes here. Active management, where your product's trying to beat the market, and classically the best places you can do that is in small cap and international, and they fluctuate around the index, so small, international, and then fixed income. You have a combination of both. You have the Vanguard Total Bond is index, and then the Allspring Core Bond and the Federated, they're active. And this is something you very rarely see, is a negative number for fixed income for 3 years, but it's just the environment we're in. And then as you see down here, cash is still basically earning close to zero. You may say, well, why do we have this in there? Because benefit payments are coming in and coming out. And then, you know, pretty much all the fees for the plan operation comes out of here. So these are net of fee numbers. If you want to know what you're paying on an estimated dollar basis, that's what this is. The overall cost to the plan is 0.41. So if somebody says, hey, what are we running this plan at? Roughly less than 0.5%, which is pretty attractive, I believe. So here you can look at it. Hey, what sectors are we over or underweighted? This is the market. This is you. You know, you're pretty much in line with the market. You know, if you wanted to say, hey, what are the biggest holdings in the portfolio? It's no surprise it represents the biggest holdings in the market, which is, you know, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, NVIDIA, Tesla, Warren Buffett. Here, this is the fixed income component, and even though it didn't work last year, and it's not just something to you. I mean, it didn't work across the world. Is the flight to quality, and what quality is defined as? You see that triple B. Anything above triple B and above is called investment grade. Triple A is the safest security out there. That's what a U.S. Treasury bond is. And the idea is if the equity markets get in trouble, there's always a flight to quality. So in the defined benefit plan, if the equity market gets grumpy, you want to make sure you have that high quality and there's a flight to it. This is the maturity, and that's this is something we don't control. This is the products underneath, which is the Vanguard Total Bond Index, the Allspring, and the Federated. So giving what happened last year, the plans, I think, in my opinion, are in pretty good shape. We've already received as a group, another 5 to 6%. We've already made that back with the markets this year. And, it looks like the next Fed meeting is coming up in early May. It looks like they have another hike, one or two rate hikes in store for us. But that's not new information. That's already embedded in the market. If they came out and did 50, then 75, that would be new information. But right now, everybody's expecting 20 to 50 basis points. They might even take a pause. If they do take a pause, we could see a tremendous rally in the market because this rate increasing is behind us. And it feels like as a country, whether you're an investor at home in your 401k or a corporation, we've kind of gotten through this. But, and I'll end on this. The one thing is, these higher rates have shown up. Where has it shown up? In the bank portfolios. And it's not that the banks made bad loans. It's just there has been a mismatch between the duration or the maturity in their portfolio relative to what they have to pay on savings accounts or checking accounts. But what is the difference between having your money at a bank or at Principal where the pension plans are? When you give your money to a bank, they can take that money, they credit it to you, they can lend it to somebody else to build a house or make investments, in their own portfolio to pay the interest. The money in the pension plan, it's actually held in a segregated account at Principal. So your Vanguard Total Bond Fund is in there. Principal doesn't take the money out of that fund and lend it out. So it's what's called segregated. And, what's happened to Silicon Valley, Signature Bank, some of these, there's one or two out there. It just was mismanagement by them. They were getting greedy. They were buying long-dated securities, trying to pay higher interest to attract deposits.
I'm not going to talk about it on camera, but if anybody wants to know what happened in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, see me afterwards and I'll tell you.
And that's an outlier. But here's the reality, though, is, every year, there's probably 3 to 10 banks across the country that get absorbed every year. So it's nothing new. It's just was the magnitude. And the thing that's different today is money it can move so quickly. You can set up accounts electronically and wire the money and not even step in a branch. And, at some point, Silicon Valley, they were losing billions of dollars per hour just because money is so fluid.
While they were closed.
Yeah, while they were closed.
Yeah, money was flowing out.
Yeah, I think I heard that weekend, J.P. Morgan opened like a couple thousand checking accounts online. People were moving money.
J.P. Morgan in March picked up $50 billion in new deposits.
Yeah.
In March.
Yeah. So, the only takeaway from that is if you have more than $250,000 at a bank, either get it into another account or keep it below that. So yeah, that's our thoughts.
I don't know if anybody has any questions for John.
Good presentation.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.
We're talking to John after.
Who gets this? The magic
Probably me.
The RMD discussion next time.
We have Keely. Keely's online. Keely is our pension counsel, and she's going to walk through an amendment on minimum distribution for us. Thank you.
Good morning. I sent over a presentation. Yep, that's it right there. You have a couple of amendments on your agenda today that are based on changes to the law. I wanted to try to break down the legalese for you. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be quite as interesting as the investment presentation, but hopefully at least then you'll have some confidence in what you're voting for. So I'll be talking to you today about the proposed plan amendments. Next slide, please. So what is a required minimum distribution? Plan participants can't let their plan funds sit in their accounts forever. The required minimum distribution is when the law basically says to plan participants, there's a date after which you must start taking distributions from the plan. And the RMD rules apply to both the employee and the beneficiary. So when we say RMD, that's the acronym under the law for the required minimum distribution. That's the amount that the participant has to take out of their plan. They can't just let it sit there. Next slide. One thing to note before I move on to the Security Act is an important component of the required minimum distribution is the required beginning date. The required beginning date is based on the age of the participant. The Secure Act, in part of its efforts to make plan funds more accessible, streamlined, and more favorable to participants, has increased the age of the required beginning date. This gives participants some extra time before they have to start taking money out of their plan, before they have to start removing their funds that are invested. So the Secure Act, the acronym there, setting every community up for retirement enhancement, that's secure. It was enacted quite a while ago now, back in 2019, but because you're a municipal entity, you had some significant extensions on the very few requirements that apply, one being this RMD, the required minimum distribution. The first increase will be the applicable age. So the applicable age for required beginning date was raised to age 73 for individuals who reach age 72 after 2022. So we have an increase in the required beginning date. However, the reason why you'll notice just the citation to the statute in your amendments to the plan is because there is escalation. So under the Secure Act, the required minimum distribution, required beginning date does increase over time. So the second increase will be, again, for individuals aged 75. So these are individuals who reach age 74, and according to the law, reach age 74 after 2032. Now, and these are supposed to start in 2033, these changes. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that's kind of bizarre dates. Us in the benefit community are also thinking that, the ERISA legal benefits community are also thinking that we do believe there might have been a little typo there. So that's why we've been recommending to clients, just cite the law, let your plan administrator take care of it, because we do think that there will be some type of an amendment in the near future to reconcile what appears to be perhaps a typo. So the new required beginning date is April 1st after the year that the participant reaches 72. So this does give participants a little bit more time to defer their distributions. Next slide, please. Application to the airport's plans. Now, you really, for all intents and purposes, there are just very few of these changes that actually would apply to the airport. But because you do have two qualified plans, you have you have just the DC plan, the defined contribution plan that's tax qualified. You also have the 457B plan. Those plans would fall under the Secure Act's changes. You would need to broaden the distribution date to reference the statute, anticipating Secure 2.0. And Secure 2.0 is what I explained before. That's the law that pushes back the age again to 75, but it has some obscure numbers in it, which makes us think it's better just to simply cite the statute instead of trying to fit in a particular age. We're going to be adding the section of the law that references the required beginning date also for beneficiaries. And we're also going to be updating the definition of the required beginning date. So those are three main steps. You'll see that just so that you're confident in understanding what you're voting on. You'll see that in your resolution, those three things: broadening the distribution date to reference the statute, anticipating other changes in the law. Trust me, that is the right section of the statute. I know when you look at it, you'll say, I don't even know what this refers to, but that's the section of the statute referencing this change in the required minimum distribution. You're gonna be adding the section of the law also for beneficiaries, step 2, and then finally, you will be updating the required beginning date. Remember, even though these changes are to the required minimum distribution, the aspect that's changing is the required beginning date, the age, in other words, of the participant. Next slide, please. You have any questions for me? I tried to keep this as short as possible. I'm a lawyer, so my instinct is to talk and talk, but that basically is what you need to know, and I'm open to any questions you might have.
All righty. Then, Frank, did you want to go through the next thing on the list?
All right, so that, we're done with that, so we're moving on to acceptance of the RMD pension plan.
Amendments that Keely just went through, the minimum distribution, so we just want to make those changes. You got that? Yeah, you want to do that? You want to stay with that? Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. So Keely just walked through the changes on the minimum age that we have to do distributions. So this is just something we have to take, and the Secure Act, these are changes that we have to make to the 457 and the 401A. So we're just asking, based on Keely's presentation, that this be accepted and moved on to the board.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it for that.
And we can do both at once at the same time?
I think so, yes.
You should be able to do that as one.
Yeah, you should do them both at the same time, because I mentioned 401A. So these, again, defined contribution plans, that's the 401A plan I just mentioned. Same thing, based on Keely's discussion, and we want to move forward with accepting that.
Right, can we use the same motion and second?
Okay, yep, I think we're good.
Then we vote?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All righty. Sit down for a minute.
Second.
For a second, this one. Keely, did you have anything that you wanted to say there?
I do not. It's great to see all of you again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to the approval of the meeting minutes. Everybody got them? Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
One,
Second.
Mike's the second, all in favor
Aye.
of the
Aye.
approval? Aye. Now the financial statements for March. And I'll turn that over to Todd. Good report.
Make sure I do a good job since John's here. I don't want to slip that. All right, always start off with the traffic. Again, that's what drives the engine. What we did add this month is bus traffic, because you can see that is really significantly going up versus 2019. But you can see where we are for year-to-date. If you go back to 2019, you can see we're above that by 3%. So again, we're on a pretty good path. Our legacy traffic, which we've been talking about a lot, you know, we're almost back to 100,000, not quite there, but again, making progress on that as well. Again, the bus traffic is something we wanted to point out because that's been coming up. So 9% of our traffic right now is bus traffic. And then for those that don't know, that's the Lion line that we use that goes daily to Philly and Newark. And again, we're hoping to expand that number, but you can see where it was in 2019 when we only had the United bus, and you can see it's 3 times that amount now.
Thanks for adding that.
Yeah, thank you.
And just a reminder, we can't count that in our FAA numbers.
Correct. And as for this last month, we wanted to see what the load factors are. So we just kind of walked it through for the first 3 months of this year compared to 2019. You can see there year to date, we're almost at 85% load factor. And in 2019, a little bit higher than 85%. Again, you can break it down by carriers there. And for those that don't know what load factors, those are available seats, but those are passengers taken available. So if we were at 100%, there would be no available seats left. So As you can see here, you can see that obviously Delta's down a little bit from where they were, up from where they were in 19. United's down some, but overall, we're pretty close to where we were in 19 as far as the load factors. Always do this, and I'm sure John will get a kick out of this one. We always compare our traffic with all airports. You can see that all airports, the throughput going to the checkpoint compared to 2019 for the same period is up over 8%. Seats are up almost 7%, and our number is 0.9, so call it 1% up in throughput and down slightly on seats, almost 1% down. But you can see that excludes bus traffic. So again, that, you know, when you talk about throughput, that's actually going through the checkpoint, and because we have so much bus traffic, that's not included in the numbers.
I would assume other similar airports to us.
Similar airports would be the same way, but again, it's, you know, it's not going to matter as much in the bigger airports because bus traffic's not going to represent that much. But for us, obviously, it'll matter because that's a significant portion.
Yep.
And we compare ourselves again, and to John's point, some of these other airports probably have some bus traffic. We don't know what that is, but you can see compared to our peers that we're doing quite well. Our peers are down almost 24% on throughput and almost 22% on seats. So most of our peers, you look at Scranton down there, would trade places with us in a minute.
Do we have any interns?
Interns?
Yeah.
I don't think we have any right now.
Why is it'd be a great intern project to tell them to go look at those 10 airports and figure out what's going on with bus traffic there and to see how we stack up.
That's an interesting idea.
Some of those facilities do have bus traffic.
I would think they
Yeah,
would.
they would, yes.
Even Amtrak does now, which is interesting.
So we'll talk about the month of March. Again, you know, we're off to a really good start for first quarter. You can see there on the budget number that we anticipated that we would lose money in March. That was kind of what we budgeted. You can see we're almost at $500,000 in net income there. So again, a lot of that driven by more traffic than we expected there, so that drives the engine. Mild winter was really beneficial for us because we saved a ton of money. I think when I looked at the numbers, it was about $67,000 year to date on snow. I think we spent over $300,000 the last 2 years on snow. So that's a big part of that delta there. But again, to start off the year, you can see that, you know, obviously one of the things that's always hit when passenger traffic goes up is parking revenue. And again, year to date, without CARES, I'm always mindful to point out without CARES because at some point, CARES is going to go away and we have to be self-sufficient. So if you look at that number there for net income year to date for 3 months, 545, if that included CARES. So if you take out that CARES, we're almost $500,000, call it, in the hole without that CARES money. But the fact that we are over $1 million without CARES actual bodes well for us as we continue to move forward because again, at some point we have to be, you know, self-sustaining without the CARES. Always break down our cost centers here. Where's our money coming from? You can see parking at the top there. That's all. It should usually be at the top because that is the place where we get the direct contact with the customer. There's no middle person. But right behind it, you can see that support that we're relying on still is CARES. So if you take those two together, that's over 90% of our net income is those two together. Obviously, aviation services. And you can see down there on, aviation lease. You can see down there on number 8 on aviation services, which in previous years was more at the top because of some of that de-icing revenue. But again, we didn't have a lot of that this year, so that's why it's down toward the bottom there. Yes?
How often are we using the overflow?
It's been open quite a few times.
We've had that open a few times,
Yeah.
and we anticipate certainly this summer.
No, this summer.
But we've used it a few times.
We're
Easter
using it
weekend.
now, definitely.
Yes, we're definitely
During
using
the
it.
Easter holiday was the most recent time we had it open.
Thank you.
Yep.
So use of the overflow lot goes with shuttle expense? Are we shuttling people from the overflow lot?
We do shuttle, yes. That expense would hit the parking line, but then the actual extra revenue of the overflow traffic would go in the parking line as well. Again, you can see what the big deltas are, salaries, wages, and benefits. Again, Some of that due to the snow. I mean, that's a big part of that for a lot of our folks, the snow. We had mild winter, so a lot of that additional cost, because there's a premium rate for us that we charge for managing snow. That's one of the things we do at our airport, and if there's milder winter, it costs us less money. Airfield, which is probably a temporary thing, because obviously we know that that's not something we can make a profit on long-term, but you can see net interest there. John talked about that before. We're earning a lot more money on our money, so that's helping us out some. Queen City, don't get too excited. We're still losing money, over 100 and some thousand, but not as much as we anticipated. Again, we always break down where we are as far as personnel and non-personnel. For the month of March, personnel costs, again, down 15%. Year-to-date, down 13. Year-to-date, down 10 on non-personnel. So again, we're managing. Some of that is timing. Some of that is the mild winter. But, you know, we're walking through kind of where we are as far as personnel. You can see that in 2021, we had 228 employees. Then we went up to 251 in 2022. And this is for the same period. So you're talking a 3-month period. And then for 2023, we're up to 272. We still have room to move, which is great. But again, you can see we're continuing to grow, and that's always a positive for the airport.
Losing that gap.
Yes. Again, this is our cash flow. We just do a 6-month here, just to kind of show what's going on. The items in yellow, or what items have changed from the last month. You can see that item 11 did change from last month. I think we were at 441 last month on the airline settlement. We did reduce that number. That number was because of the bus traffic. We did some legalese on that, and we determined that we did not have to settle on the bus. So right now, until they go to the checkpoint, we'll deal with that later. But at that point, that brought down the number some, and then we kind of adjusted it some to come in where we thought we needed to come in. You can see the other item on there that's been changed significantly is a loan proceeds for the connector. Again, that's timing. You know, again, our 2-year period is June, when we're supposed to be kind of rolling it over. I've already talked to the bank about that being a little later. But again, you can see that we're coming to the end of collecting all that money on the connector. And then this is just kind of the timing on some of these things. I'll move it if it's a $10,000 number, and these numbers change because it changed from one month to the next. It's a big number when you're dealing with these items. And you can see here now, one of the things we added in on line 30, I added in is, and that is, if for people that don't remember, we added in line 30, and that is not a real number. That is just for cash flow. That is for us to say, hey, if we have been paying the debt all along, how much will we be short in our money? It's just kind of getting us ready for the full debt of that connector, right? So, you know, we're paying, you know, $100,000, close to that, in the debt. You know, we got to kind of prepare for the fact that at some point we're going to have to pay that every single month. And that was kind of us preparing it. So we just push it out, and at some point it comes off, because again, it's just kind of to remind us that we have to pay for that. But you can see, even with that in there right now, that we are well above our 60-day number that we try to stay above. And that 60-day number is after reserves and contingencies. So that 60, including reserves and contingencies, but we want to stay at least at 60 days cash on hand. Never want to go back to 3 days cash on hand from.
What's the hit in April again?
Sorry?
What's the hit in April again to cash?
The hit in April on the cash was the timing of the connector.
Okay.
Because, you know, that's such a big number.
Yeah.
So, and if you move it back, so that's what it is.
Okay.
Great question, thank you. Any questions? I know we've got a lot of stuff going on, but all in all, try to keep these reports short when things are going well, right? You know, nobody wants to hear me talk when things are going well, so we had a good first quarter. Maybe these reports will get shorter and shorter, because that means we're doing really well. All right, thank you.
Tom and team, any other questions for Todd?
You want to vote on that there?
Question might be more for Tom. How's the jobs market lately in terms of hiring new people? Has it softened a little bit where we're seeing more interest, or?
I think so. I mean, we have, you know, some of the experts in the room here in terms of what we're seeing on the employment side and applications. So I don't know, Zoe, from your perspective.
Okay.
We probably haven't been this nicely staffed with applicants in the flow in a long time.
Okay, good.
So it's, you know, certainly good news. And I know John talked a little bit about, in his presentation, the market, but we still have some room to go for full staffing. But, you know, I think it's positive in terms of the applicants that we're
Yep.
seeing.
We're seeing that at the bank too.
All right, if no other questions
I'll
for
make a motion
John?
to accept.
Thank you. Motion by Mike to accept the finance statements for presentation to the board. Second? Second by John, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're gonna hear about the BMO demand line of credit, Todd?
I'd like to sit down for half a second. So this was put in notice, and this is just more, I'm sure John is seeing this a lot. The standard change from LIBOR, the London International Bank
Offering rate.
offering, thank you,
Yeah.
to SOFI.
So far.
So it's just kind of what the standard is. So we have our line of credit, it's a demand line of credit with BMO Harris that we actually did in 2016. You can see there, London International Offer Rate, LIBOR, I wrote it on there in case I forgot. Secured Overnight Financing Rate, SOFR. So, SOFI, however we want to call it, SOFR. Okay. Again, it's just changing the matrix. It's sort of like what is your variable rate based on for the demand line. The demand line is not a lease line, so we did this in 2016 for extra cash. We've never used it, but we want to keep it available in case we need it at some time, and it's just truly if we needed it for cash. There's no fees associated with it unless we use it. So we, at the time when we went through this, because this is something we have to make, the bank sent us for it, we did have it reviewed by bond counsel, just kind of this, good maintenance, good stewardship of all these things that come through. We did remove the WBF lawsuit reference that was in that original document. For those of you that weren't here, that was almost on everything we talked about back then. John probably remembers where every word was the WBF lawsuit. So we moved that from the document. But again, you can see that the change is negligible. It's about the same rate currently, about 6.3 on both rates. It's just a matrix change.
And again, LIBOR's going away. We have no choice to keep it. It's being replaced by SOFR, so.
Correct. I mean, it's not something we can do, but obviously we have to change the document.
So it's $1 million line of credit. We're changing the changes you just discussed. Motion to approve that.
Move.
John, second by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right. And then,
Don't sit down yet.
Oh, shoot, I was all set to sit down. I forgot about that.
The rest of us were hoping.
Wow, I was hoping too. Wow. Wow, it's a tough crowd around here. Just wanted to give an audit update. Our audit is still on schedule for next month. We're going to have Crow is going to come out and do the presentation at our committee, and then they will be on the phone in case there's any questions at the board meeting. But again, we're on schedule. This is a transition. For those of you who don't know, we're transitioning from Karen, who's been kind of my right-hand person on the accounting side for, she's 7, 8 years now. She's kind of transitioning, and Shane, who's not here today, is kind of moving into that role, and he took the lead on a lot of the audit stuff. We're on schedule. There doesn't seem to be any problems so far. We're going to have a meeting with them, I believe, on Monday to kind of see where we are, but so far, no problems. They came in and did their field work. Everything's on course. Again, we will send it out like we always do before Scott comes in from Crow for our next committee meetings. But again, just wanted to give you an update that we're on track. And for those that we have to approve the audit by, actually our drop dead date has to be approved by, I believe, July 1st. So we always do it in May. Well, we try to do it in May in case there's any issues. So we have another month, but we don't foresee any issues at this point in time. Just wanted to kind of update. Any questions, concerns? Okay?
all right, any new business from the group?
Justin, Justin.
Maybe.
Please, Todd.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, without any new business, I take a motion to adjourn. Mike? Second?
All you need's a motion. Frank,
Okay,
you're good.
excellent, and we're good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Frank.
hop right in, or?
All right, thank you,
Do people
John.
need a break, or do we have a?
Anytime you want to talk about Silicon Valley Bank, you call
Hi.
Between those rap bastards.
Let's do it.
Uh-oh, gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it, yeah, they didn't have a risk officer for like.
$1 billion without.
We have a quorum?
Jeff's on there and Robert.
When you hire a risk
Yeah.
when I need one, when I don't need one.
Okay, we do a roll call, or do you wanna just roll with it?
We can do a roll call just to get it on the record.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Welcome to the April 20th Business Committee meeting. We do a roll call, please.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Don Gottschall. James Irwin.
Here.
Jeff Maskin.
Here.
Thank you. Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Chris Worley.
Thank you.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment?
No, sir.
All right. We'll start with the approval of the meeting minutes of March 23rd. I get a motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Noes opposed? Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. Ryan, would you please take it up there, please?
For the passenger boarding bridge acquisition.
Great, thank you. Morning, everybody. So we talked a little bit about this last month, something upcoming. Again, wanted to bring to the committee, but we're looking to award a bid for 2 new passenger boarding bridges here at ABE. Quick summary of what is included, but really Gate 3 and Gate 10. If you recall, Gate 3 we demolished a couple years ago. It was really out of service. Gate 10 we've had since Wiley was constructed in '97, and it's had quite a few issues even since it was put in. But each bridge also includes a preconditioned air unit, which is basically giving the aircraft and the bridge air conditioning and heat when it's sitting there not running. Again, included on our CIP, we did open 3 bids actually this past Monday. Again, the bid tabulation recommendation letter is in there. The biggest component of this, and again, kudos to Colin, as we mentioned before, getting funding through PennDOT or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. So our share of everything I'm talking about is 0. VRH Construction of Englewood, New Jersey submitted the apparent lowest responsive and responsible bid. Kind of some background that's on there too. There's really only 2 main passenger boarding bridge manufacturers in the U.S. VRH Construction does installation, again, all across the country, airports. They did submit, again, for base bid and that alternate 1. Base bid was Jet Bridge 3, which again included a fixed walkway because it's on the lower level of our old departure concourse, and then a new bridge for 10. The ad alternate 2 was if companies could provide a refurbished option for Bridge 10 just for cost comparison, which wasn't included in here based on the numbers that we received. So the big thing too, again, even working with VRH Construction, they are using a few local subcontractors to help with the installation, and the bridge that they spec'd, which is what we were looking for, was JBT, which matches all the other bridges that we have. Some other components that, if you recall, and I can get to it in the capital project updates, we included additional phases for the bridge rehab project. So the 2 new bridges was 1. The foundations for Jet Bridge 3, because that fixed walkway, was another. And then the last one was actually updating all of the controls for each of the boarding bridges. And the controls that are included here, and even some cloud-based remote management, which is what we wanted, was included as well, which will help our maintenance folks keeping things running, and if there are issues, where they are. So again, long and short of it, we're looking for approval to award the base bid and now alternate 1 to VRH Construction of Englewood, New Jersey, for a total contract amount of $2,140,000.
Who are the local subs?
So 1, I believe, is from Reading for the crane that's needed. Another one is Defender for the electric from Allentown.
You don't know who the crane
Not offhand, I think they're from Reading, we've used them before. It's in the, I think it's in the summary, but.
Brian, if you scroll back up a little bit, you made the comment that the bridges are compatible with the Airbus A320,
Yep.
also Boeing 737, I would assume?
Yeah, everything up to that. I mean, even a lot of our bridges today, and they could accommodate the 757, which aren't really flown anymore, but the larger aircraft.
When is Allegiant going to start flying their new planes, or are they already?
Not that I'm aware of, they're not, but they're doing the training this year, so I wouldn't expect those to be rolled out until next year, Connie, but I don't know if you know anything more on the timeline of that.
No, we haven't heard a lot, just that they're in the training process for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the VRH Construction boarding bridge acquisition.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. All right, discussion project for capital projects update.
Great, all right, thank you. All right, so we'll move through typical updates, a couple changes, I think I mentioned to kind of get through, but again, where we are with the runway project, really getting ready to kick off here near the end of the month. So compared to last month, nothing's really changed here. Biggest change here, package one, finally got all our money. FAA gave us final closeout letter, so that one is finally off the list. It's 2018. Again, package 2 and 3 are both in the closeout process, getting the paperwork from the contractor, reconciling all the numbers and quantities. Package 3, the punch list items have been addressed. We're just going out in the field to verify what's been completed. But again, biggest thing for all these closeouts, as I mentioned before, is getting our final grant reimbursement amounts from the FAA, which is important to close them as quickly as we can. In terms of package 4, taxiway Echo North was reopened at the end of March. I believe I mentioned that last time. Taxiway Gulf construction, which you kind of see on the left, has begun, which closes a portion of taxiway Alpha. So here's where the new taxiway connector will be. And here's that Alpha 3 that's actually getting this section here that's getting removed. So currently doing that work as we speak. Package 5, looking to get started on runway closures around the end of the month. The infiltration basin, just kind of the northwest side of runway 6, started earlier last week, with just some grading and site work that needed to happen there. EMAS bed rehab project, again, we talked about before. They did start this past Monday as well, which again was back to that savings that we talked about, which was applied. Again, they're out there doing the work as we speak. It's about a 2-week project. Once they're done, they'll then do that strength test that we talked about just to confirm everything is where it should be.
And when will that have to be redone? How long does the ceiling last?
Between 5 and 8 years is what we anticipate with some regular routine. I think monthly our maintenance team goes out and inspects every seam, every joint.
Reseals them.
Reseals them as needed.
Do patchwork, keep it, get it closer to 8
It's a
years than 5.
monthly inspection process.
Ryan, can you back up 2 slides to package 5?
Sure.
So who are Morrissey subcontractors? Do we know that?
So we are waiting on a few documents in terms of confirming who they actually have under contract. Part of that is with our DBE plan. So we're waiting for that list, but I know they submitted a whole slew of potential.
That was
subs.
bid a year and a half ago, right?
It was bid last June, yeah, for the grant. So
So almost a year ago.
Yep.
Okay. I would, in the future, when we're approving contracts, I would like to see the subcontractors as well, as we're approving them. Because Morrissey's, they're a good company. I'm just using them as an example here. But like what I've seen in the construction industry, if they're not showing you their subs up front, you don't know who's coming in. And you gotta, how do I say this? Sometimes the work isn't as quality as they could be because they bring subs in at the end that aren't quality subs to try to save a couple dollars.
no, understood. Well, and to that point, the big piece here is before they can start, again, by the end of April, assuming they give us all that information, is any changes they provided in their sub list, we have to approve.
Okay.
So that is a good point in terms of that component.
I've just seen it a lot. I mean, Morrissey, they're a reputable company. They've been around a long
Yeah.
time.
That is a good point, because that's, yeah, we definitely want to avoid that.
And we have had our battles with both generals and subs. So that's something that's always on our
Oh,
minds.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, no, that's good. That's a good point.
Yep.
Absolutely, because again, it's part of the overall contract of the work we're trying to get done.
right.
Absolutely. Okay, no, that's a good point. Again, we talked about this earlier, so we'll update this slide as we progress that project. And again, you can see, as I mentioned, the different phases, which will be upcoming as we continue forward. Hangar 7 restroom construction is moving along fairly well. We have a internal site visit tomorrow to kind of go through where they are. But window installation is about 90% complete. The side office, you see in the bottom left, is complete. A lot of the tile work is done. Next couple of days into next week, the flooring will be put in. But again, we're getting the tail end of the project, which is great to have that back up for our customers out there. Building demolition, again, still on here, but no real updates other than some of the seating and grading that they're going to start here this month, and more to come on some additional building demolition that we have slated for later in the year. And moving on to Queen City, the design for 1533, again, the pavement design is complete. This portion now is the electrical work. We did have a pre-bid meeting yesterday. Bids are due May 3rd, and again, this lines up with our grant funding cycle with the FAA as well. Biggest thing now with any of the interested contractors is just coordinating site visits to take a look out in the field. On top of that, the construction for the rehab of 1533 has actually started again earlier this week. New perimeter haul road route has been installed. And the biggest thing, again, coordinating with operations and the folks down at Queen City, is 1533 is closed through June. 725 is still operational. The biggest thing at the end of this month, early May, will be a 5-day nightly closure of both runways. So we'll definitely continue to get that notification out to our tenants. And with this, as well as with Taxiway Alpha, I was actually coordinating with our local FAA FSDO, which is the Flight Standards District Office, and they've been sending out notification to about 4,000 pilots in the Northeast area that could potentially use the facility. So just getting a lot of that notification out there for them is helpful. Again, as I updated last time with just some of the different charts to make it easier to follow, but again, included some of the projects we've been talking about with the EMAS, the boarding bridges, as we'll update based on the information that we're getting. And again, you'll see, again, package 1 will come off and continue to track these other ones as we go. So the biggest thing that we added from last time, and thanks, Todd, to you and your team for helping with some of the pretty graphics, but what we wanted to do is kind of at the end of first quarter is talk through some of they're called Exhibit B from our budget, but really the departmental projects. There was about 60 or so line items that have vehicles and other smaller items that are still worth discussing. They just aren't some of the major projects that we've been doing. But as you'll see on the left is, as you recall, kind of in the middle, we had different priorities for each of the projects that you kind of see there, and where we track with each of those priorities in terms of the green you see on the left is committed or complete. The blue, the darker blue, is committed, in process, and then the tan is kind of open. So you can see we've been focusing, rightfully so, our attention on the 1s and 2s. Due to timing, some 3s and 4s have been mixed in there as well. But the biggest thing, again, as Todd mentioned, even with the cash flow, working together on the timing, you can see because of placing orders in the first quarter, a lot of them won't come until the second or third, which is why you see the bigger spike in estimated payments in the second and third quarter. But also the biggest thing is the approved budget amount was $4.4 million. Again, right now with where we're tracking, slightly under, but we'll continue to update these as we go, just for the committee. And what some of those projects are, again, just to show, 6 new ARF doors were actually just recently installed. There's 4 in the front, 2 in the back. 2 actually transit maintenance vans, so electric vehicles Maintenance team has been using for those. VMAG gate operator at gate 8. VMAG is the brand, but really the benefit here is it opens and closes extremely quickly. So for deliveries and access, it just makes it more efficient. Baggage east makeup doors, which are out here on the east side. Again, go up and down in just a few seconds. It helps with heat retention, bird mitigation, those kind of things we've been looking at for quite some time. And then again, a grind laser to help with our airfield paint removal. Other project that was on there that you'll see if you go out into Wiley and Departure is we're doing an ongoing carpet replacement. A lot of this ties to some of the connector portions as it'll connect into Wiley. But you can see the top is what was there. And again, carpet from 1997 isn't necessarily in stock anymore. You got to take some pieces here to make some repairs, and then you can see on the bottom will progress throughout. So the installer has actually been doing a good job working around our flights, working around the operations. Today and tomorrow they'll actually be in the old Departure concourse just based on Allegiant schedule, because when there's 2 or 3 flights out there, so you can't do the work. And then working around some of the escalators, elevators, again, to not disrupt the passengers. So that's it for that one. Any questions on those before I move on to the connector? Okay. All right, going through the connector, about 85% complete. Again, getting to the tail end, which is great. You can see some of the major work that's been completed. And then some of the ongoing work items. It's really finalizing the shell, some of the glass, the panels, and then as you'll see in some of the photos, a lot of the finish work, which again is really nice to see how the renderings we've seen and plans are really starting to come to fruition in terms of what it's actually going to look like. As you can see here, the bridge, windows are now on both sides, so even when you're in there, when they're working, it's a heck of a lot brighter than it was, which again was part of the design intent. You can see that's the west side of the building that has a lot of the dynamic glass. Again, they're still working on some of the components. And then you actually see here in the middle, there will be a gray kind of strip of siding that'll cut it off, so you won't see the jut out of windows, just as an FYI looking at that. Biggest thing most of you probably saw, I know Colin put out a great video in terms of the intricate assembly and bringing in of the escalators into the vertical circulation. I know we were spending a lot of time looking out the window at that as well, just to make sure everything was fitting in where it should. Again, you can see them in place. I got those in 2 days. Brought the crane in on a Monday, put them in Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the crane was out of here Thursday, Friday. So where we were or are actually as of last night, you can see some of the terrazzo in the middle, and then further back some of the column covers are starting to go in, and then the wall siding is actually starting to go up as well, which again is great to see. And then just a little panoramic of where we are today. Just to the right is where the queue lane would be. So as you're coming in, that's kind of the progress of where we are currently. Some of the TSA offices, getting some of the finishing touches there with the ceiling and the walls. The carpet will be last. Again, lighting in the vertical circulation. Again, where that plastic is where the escalators came through and dropped down. Next few weeks, they should be working on the glass there as well. Again, you can see the bridge with the glass on both sides. The next few weeks, they'll be working on the terrazzo up in that bridge area as well. Generator arrived on site, was installed, so that's in there as well. Again, where we are, as we've talked through, progression, TSA equipment prep is probably the big one that we're getting ready for them next month. Elevators and escalators, again, continuing with some of the finishing, ultimately the commissioning to work through some of the logistics there. Again, where we are with some of the phasing, the waterproofing existing tunnel is part of when they do the paving, the apron paving. Again, commissioning the checkpoint vertical circulation, and then after that, again, we have the tunnel portion of the project, which is more aesthetic versus operational, but still critical. Again, no real changes here. Funding is still the same. Again, the big thing of tracking with the end dates is, we talked a little bit about this last month, is coordinated the decommissioning of the existing elevator at the end of the bridge. In order to get that out of the way, we obviously need the new elevators up and running. So we're actually coordinating a lot with Schindler and Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry that actually certifies them to make sure we can do what we can to get that done as quickly as we can. So any questions? That's it? Questions on that? Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.
Any new business? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second? Meeting adjourned.
Does anyone need a break before we roll into exec, or we can roll tide? Okay, go ahead and call the April 20, 2023 Executive Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda, Sylvette, if you could call the roll, please.
John Hayes.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Mike Stershik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, perfect. Let's see, next, do we have any public comment?
We do not, sir.
Into the action items, I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes for March 23rd. Motion by Glenn, second by Mike. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the Florio Perucci invoices for March of 2023. They were uploaded to Novus Agenda. Entertain a motion. Motion by Justin, second by Glenn. Any discussion on those invoices? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ryan, you're back up.
Actually, this will be Darren for
Oh,
us.
this will be Darren.
And I think
Oh,
Darren was dialing in.
There he
so
is.
There he is.
Looks like he's there.
Yep.
Yeah, good morning,
Thought
everybody.
with Darren not here, you're going to be backstanding.
It's a very good early morning here in Las Vegas, so
Excited.
glad to be out here meeting with the Legion. We were having great meetings, but just wanted to bring folks up to date right now on the our hotel project. So
Darren,
just go ahead and flip over to the next slide.
Darren, while you're there, feel free to work in an Allentown to Vegas route.
It is on the top of the priority list, especially considering the adventures it took for me to get to Vegas the other day. I would like to have a direct flight for sure. So, but heavy lift for them at this point. So,
Yeah, understood.
So anyhow, I just want to bring folks up to date on the hotel project. The plan for us at this point is we'll be back to the committee and board next month, looking to approve a term sheet with our hotel developer. So after, many months of kind of working this out, I think we've got a deal that's going to work great for us and work, well for the developer as well. So we've talked about this a few times, but just to sort of refresh your memory and add some more detail to it, we're looking at a 125 room Marriott Courtyard. It's a nice product, an upper level product. So we're excited about that. The proposed lease at this point in time will be a 40-year ground lease with up to a 9-year extension, basically keeping it under 50 years to help comply with our FAA grant assurances. That extension will be based on basically retirement of the bonds, and we'll talk a little bit about the financing on the next slide. But the way the financing works is once those bonds are retired, that's when the hotel returns over to us. We will have an option to terminate early by paying off those bonds. So, in the event the hotel is doing really well, I believe that's going to be after year 12, that option will kick in. So we could consider at some point in time retiring those bonds and take possession of the hotel early if we so desired. So the reason for the term sheet is the developer wants to get moving forward on design and permitting, and they have to start investing some real money in the project. They've certainly invested some to date, but this will be that number will start to ratchet up once they start doing design and permitting. So this is basically protection for them in the event that we would decide not to move forward with the project later on, and we didn't have cause to terminate, they would be reimbursed for their $200,000, up to $200,000 of pre-development costs. So the developer is a company now called Hotel Partnerships and Development Advisory, LLC. Many of you remember meeting Tony Peterman, who was with JLL. He is now the managing partner of this company, and he's moved. This project has gone with him. So Tony's been our contact from day one. So we're very comfortable making that switch from JLL over to the new company. Basically, as part of this term sheet, it just gives us the ability then along with the permitting, we will then immediately start, and we've actually already started to negotiate a development agreement and the ground lease so that when they're ready to move forward, that will all be done and we'll be ready to sign, hopefully, ideally by the end of this year or early 2024. So any questions on that before I move to the next slide?
Darren, the reimbursement requirement, that would be up to $200,000 between signing of term sheet and final agreement being signed? Is that
Yeah,
period that covers?
Exactly. So that if for some reason we decided not to move forward with the final ground lease and we didn't have cause, it gives them the ability, protects them in that case.
Is that typical in deals of this type?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, they've got to put money out of pocket. I think the big thing for them is, and that's why we're basically, when we come next month with the term sheet, we're going to present, all those terms are going to be what are basically going to be in the ground lease. So that's our chance to say this doesn't work for us or it does work for us. So, we won't see major changes between that term sheet and what the ground lease will be.
So the term sheet will be sufficiently detailed that will be covered?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, so, and you've seen this slide a little bit before. We've actually filled in a few more blanks on it than we had the last time, I believe. So you see our hotel developer over there, which is that HP&D Advisors. They have selected Colliers as their design firm. They've selected Boyle Construction as the construction firm and Crestline Hotels as the hotel operator. None of those deals have been signed. They won't be signed until after that we approve that term sheet and sign the term sheet with them. The Provident Resources Group will actually be the owner of the hotel. It's a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit ownership of the hotel. They'll be working with a bond issuing agency, which I actually found out late last night, so I didn't have time to fill in that blank. Will be, I think it's Levi Valley Industrial Development Authority, I guess through LVDC, basically. They'll be the bond issuing agency, so they'll get some fees out of that as well. And then Stifel is the investment bank that actually will handle the transaction. And then you can see Preston Hollow Capitals, who's actually, they'll be the ones that will be providing the capital. So we were originally, way back when we started this was going to be a public bond offering, but considering where the public market has gone, we're basically going to do private equity instead. So that's all been agreed to with Preston Hollow. So I know they have an agreement with HP&D that will also be signed at the same time that we sign our term sheet. So as far as the way the hotel kind of will operate, like I said, it's a nonprofit. There's going to be a management committee and advisory committee. We'll have seats on both of those. We'll have at least one seat on that management committee, and a minimum of 2 seats on the advisory committee. So the advisory committee is kind of the day-to-day operation of the hotel. The management committee is the more long-term and the financial approval of the hotel operations.
So a nonprofit's going to own a hotel?
They've done it other places. It's pretty interesting. So basically, they're a nonprofit that exists to assist governmental agencies. That's the simplest way. And certainly, if we have more questions on this next, when we bring the term sheet, Tony can speak to it much better than I can. But that is basically what it is. They've done this with a couple others. I don't believe they've done an airport yet, but they've done other public entities. They've done a university recently. I know that they've worked with other municipalities as well. So.
Yeah, with our involvement at the management level and at the advisory level, and I know we had this conversation a couple of years ago, but it's a couple of years ago.
Right.
Tell Tony to bring good information on that so that we're all comfortable with it.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I will do that for sure. Well, and at some point we'll be able to decide, kind of who sits in those seats, whether it's staff member. It doesn't even necessarily have to be an LNAA member. If there's someone from the community that we would like to see representing our interests on those committees, we could look at that as well. So if there's a hotel expert or something that we want to do, we can always, it can be that. It doesn't necessarily have to be LNAA personnel on those committees. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. Like I said, we will be back next month with the completed term sheet, and be looking for approval and hopefully get this project moving forward.
Okay, open the floor for questions of Darren.
Does the nonprofit status of the hotel have any tax issues related to the property? It's a commercial venture. Does that become taxable even though it's owned by a nonprofit?
It does. We will pay taxes. We'll pay real estate taxes, school taxes on that property.
Okay.
Yeah, the only structure I've seen in that regard is nonprofits having for-profit subsidiaries.
Yeah, that I've seen.
That's common. but an actual nonprofit owning, I'm really curious to hear more about
Yeah.
that, because that's not,
I haven't seen
not
that
something
before.
I've seen. Don, you're a nonprofit expert. Have you seen that at all? Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting conversation. Glenn, have you? You've been in the world for a while. I'm not calling you old.
I was gonna say, wow.
That's another way of saying you're old.
I was trying to figure out a way to
That might
tackle
be worse than me
it.
asking Todd to sit down.
Seniors.
That was rough.
At least he said it to me.
I'll him a beer for that one.
I don't know, I think something, yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, so we'll have that discussion. We don't have any action to take at this point, so,
Nothing for that.
yep. So next month's discussion, be prepared for some time, because we'll want to make sure that we vet this. This project's been around,
Yeah.
it's 3, 4, 5 years at this point. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we got very close right before COVID, and then, obviously the pandemic kind of waylaid the project pretty badly, but
Yeah,
pretty happy to get it back around to here again, so.
Right.
We're finish
So-
line.
so we want to come in next month with the operating understanding that none of us remembers what we talked about 3.5 years ago, so that we have a very full airing of it. Because I can tell you from my perspective, I remember some of it, but not enough to be able to say that I can rely on my memory and not have to go over those points. And we've got new people at the table, so we want to make sure that everybody
Yeah, we'll do our-
understands the transaction.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do our best to actually provide some of that information ahead of time as well, so that, you
That'd be
can kind of
fantastic.
look it over before it's coming to the committee.
Yep, that's a good idea. Okay, any other questions, any comments for
I
Darren?
remember meeting with the feasibility consultant for this project the
Yep.
year I retired, which was 2018. So
Yeah.
that's when the original feasibility was done. I'm sure they've done updates to it since then.
Yep.
but,
Yeah, and I remember we talked to 3 or 4 different parties for
Yep.
the development. I know one was Joshi,
Yeah.
from a local perspective.
Yep.
I don't remember the other ones, but yeah, this is where we gotta make sure that we go back and
Dust that
revisit
off
that.
again. Sure.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. Let's see then, next on the agenda, we have a nominating committee update. Mike?
Larry couldn't be here today, so he just wanted me to let everybody know that the nomination, that we'll be voting next week on the nominees, and the nominees are John Hayes continuing to serve as chair, Glenn continuing as vice chair, Justin continuing as secretary treasurer, I will continue as the Lehigh County representative, and Paul Anthony as the Northampton County representative. And I just wanted to reiterate for everyone that if anyone would like to be nominated, they're free to do so out on the floor next Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Mike, thank you. Do we have any new business to bring before the executive committee today? Hearing none, I don't believe we have any need for exec session.
Nothing, I don't know if there's anything on the Gloria side. Okay.
Sounds good. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The move, we're good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. See you on Tuesday at
At
noon.
noon, don't forget to take a
Yep.
taco.
Again, the best tacos on the planet, and I'm not exaggerating that.
So,
They are really, really good, so.
Here, or am I gonna-
They will be here, they'll be outside on the